Why are your students struggling to grasp math concepts? And what if the way that you respond adds or decreases their confusion? I know that I always work on how I respond so that students' misconceptions don't continue. One of the things that we need to work on as teachers is becoming facilitators for students to solve their misconceptions rather than the sole fountains of knowledge. Hi, I'm Michelle, founder of Thinking Math Corner, and I'm on a mission to help teachers build student thinkers through productive struggle, not memorization. One of the first jobs that we have when students come to us with a misconception is to diagnose the problem. So we have to have the right teacher move to respond to whatever the diagnosis is. It's important when we're working with a student that we diagnose the issue and then deal with the actual problem. So when their students are coming to me saying, I don't know how to add these fractions, I need to diagnose. Do they have a base understanding of fractions? Do they understand what a fraction is? Do they conceptually understand the connection between numerator and denominator? Do they get lost in the vocabulary? Is that the problem? Do they understand the concepts but aren't able to articulate it? Those all require different teacher moves as a response to that diagnosis. And one of the things that can be damaging with teacher moves is me saying, make a common denominator and add the numerator, because that takes all of the thinking, all of the conceptual understanding away from students and leaves it with me. I already conceptually understand the concept. Why am I holding on to that? Let's give that to students. One of the things that allows us to diagnose correctly is the art of asking questions. And this art, not a science really, an art, can never be underestimated. The importance is so real. If we ask questions in a certain way, we provoke a certain response. If I lean in when I ask the question, if I word the question in a way that leads the student to know what the right answer is, then they don't have a chance to actually explain where they've gone wrong because they don't want to look like they don't know it. So we have to ask questions in a way that genuinely get at the thinking and normalize that productive struggle. The point of the question, yes, is to diagnose, but it's also to set the student on a self-discovery. And oftentimes, if I ask just the right question at just the right moment, I see this spark of understanding flare in the student's eyes. And they look at me and go, oh, all right, I got it. And really, that's the part of teaching that I love. If you click in the video description, you'll see a link to the 3 thinking triggers. And that's a free guide that I put together for teachers to be able to help jumpstart the art of questioning. Here are some 3 strategies that you can use that will trigger thinking in students if they're used the right way. But what happens when representation gets in the way? Let's talk about that next. Are your students confused because we're switching between graphs and tables or word problems and equations, and we're going back and forth between representations? That could be a whole different issue. And that ability to go between representations can be a huge game changer in students understanding the material. Sometimes when I'm teaching slope, I love going between all of the different representations because students will naturally gravitate to one or the other, and they will really hang on to that. And then when I give them something a little different, suddenly they don't understand slope. And so one of the things we work on is going back and forth. And it's not just going back and forth between representations, but sometimes within a representation. So for instance, if I show slope only on a graph that goes by units on the scale, and it's just going up by 1 each way, then what can happen is that when I provide a graph where it's not doing that, maybe it's going up by hundreds, suddenly they're talking about the slope being 1/2. If we have to put it in context, they don't know what they're talking about because they're not properly interpreting the graph and what slope actually means. So they're taking a very surface level understanding, and then we're trying to deepen that. So using different representations and oftentimes within a representation is really important. One thing to be mindful of is we have a variety of diverse learners in our classroom. And so we need to be really careful that our representations are diverse, like them, but also that provide variety and aren't designed just to cater to one over the other type of learner. There's a surprising key to help students connect that information. We all know about prior knowledge. It can be small, it can be big, but we have to connect what they already know to what they're going to learn. And so sometimes going backwards just a little to be able to make that connection more obvious is the key. It's also why group work can be so valuable when it comes to connecting prior knowledge, because then we get the group knowledge and the group prior knowledge together, and we can each work together to bring the other one to make the connection. And so that can often be super valuable. And students talking to students will always make more sense to them than us talking to them. So now that you know how to address student confusion in the classroom, you're going to want to go back to the video on the screen and look at the question that you can ask that provokes student thinking as opposed to taking it and keeping it.